What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss the latest on iOS 18.2 and 18.3 beta. We're going to talk about what happened to CarPlay 2.0, updates on iOS 19, Apple's fix for one of their most controversial products, the iPhone SE 4 might not be called the iPhone SE 4, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Okay, so first off, happy new year, happy 2025. This is the first video of 2025, and this week has been slow for Apple. We didn't see anything released as usual, so we are going to see new updates and Apple get back into the swing of things starting next week, and we'll talk more about that later on in this video. But as of right now, the latest public iOS release is iOS 18.2, which was a big update where we got a lot of new Apple Intelligence features and just a lot of big features in general. I did make a video on that here on the channel. Now, as far as the latest beta goes, that is iOS 18.3 beta 1, and that's a relatively minor update. We didn't really see much included in beta 1, aside from if you go into your settings, accessibility, and then go down here, you will see a new glyph icon here for the camera control. But other than that, really minor changes in 18.3 beta 1. However, we did see an update from Shrimp Apple Pro over on X. He did post this about something that's been updated with Apple Intelligence, the Apple Intelligence model. So he says that the model responsible for the sketch features is now working, as is skin tone for Genmoji, and also updates for notification summaries. However, you can see in the replies here, it looks like the sketch changes and the Genmoji changes were actually added previously. So really the only thing new here appears to be updates to the notification summaries. If you remember, a few weeks ago, I talked about how that was a big deal because the BBC even put out an article basically ridiculing Apple for the notification summaries and how it can be kind of misleading for people to see a summarized version of their notification where it might not be entirely the truth. So maybe Apple started changing and kind of tweaking the model to make it a little bit better and maybe less misleading for specific scenarios, especially when it comes to news applications and news, reports. So if you're somebody who has not been the biggest fan of the notification summaries, you might be seeing an improvement with 18.3, and I am starting to test this on my main device. I did just recently update my main device to iOS 18.3 beta 1 after being on 18.2 for quite some time. So I am going to test to see if there's any change in the notification summaries. But as far as anything else goes in terms of features in 18.3 beta 1, we don't really have much, but again, we are expecting a pretty minor update for 18.3 because iOS 18.4 is going to be the big update with the big Siri changes and some other Apple Intelligence changes as well. But in the meantime, we are most likely going to see an 18.2.1. So this was reported by Mac Rumors. This was showing up in their analytics. So it looks like an 18.2.1 is coming, as is, of course, iOS 18.3 beta 2. We should be seeing that again next week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So those are highly anticipated, but something else that was highly anticipated but did not end up coming at all is CarPlay 2.0. So Apple said that CarPlay, the next generation of CarPlay, is coming in 2024, but it's now 2025, and there's not one vehicle that supports it. Now, of course, this is not entirely Apple's fault. Apple most likely has the software pretty much done. I mean, it didn't really take much on Apple's end, it doesn't seem like, but there's, of course, a big, laundry list of, I'm sure, regulations and different people to go through to get this approved. So I'm sure this falls more on the automakers than it does on Apple. However, that makes me wonder why Apple even published a date to begin with. So it's really interesting to see that. And, Porsche and Aston Martin were the first two car makers to actually say they are going to support CarPlay 2.0. However, we have not seen anything. And we did see recently within the past few months that Porsche, basically commented and said they're sticking with regular CarPlay for the foreseeable future. So we're not sure if CarPlay 2.0 has been completely canceled or what, but it's kind of turning into AirPower at this point. Not really the same because it's not Apple's core product. It's it's really on the automakers as well, but you know what I mean. It's pretty interesting that we're not really hearing anything about it for the second year in a row. And speaking of cars, we might be seeing more states add the Apple driver's license feature, the state ID feature, pretty soon. So if you go into your wallet and go to the plus right here and go to driver's license or state ID, you can see these are the current supported states for the driver's license or state ID, where it can just be on your iPhone and you can present that to TSA agents. However, we're seeing now that this will be coming to 7 states pretty soon. So this is put together by, Mac Rumors, and hopefully this happens in 2025, but there's not a definitive date for this, but you can see here what those states are. So it's Montana, West Virginia, Connecticut, Kentucky, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Utah. And then here's a list of the TSA checkpoints within the US where this is accepted. And you can see that that number is growing as well. So I can't wait to try this. Of course, we don't have Florida just yet, but if you're on here or if you're one of those states where it's coming soon, congratulations. This feature seems pretty awesome, especially if you travel often. Now, we also recently heard that iOS 19 could potentially support all devices that were supported with iOS 18, which wouldn't be a big surprise, especially if it turns out to be a more, bug fix, stability type update, which we hear about that all the time. Who knows if that'll actually happen, but we are hearing that all devices will be supported once again. So that's going to be pretty good news if you are on an older device on iOS 18. But of course, it's too early to tell just yet. These rumors are really just guesses at this point. Now, if you have some free time this weekend, you will definitely want to take advantage of the free weekend for Apple TV Plus. Yes, for the first time ever, Apple TV Plus will be free from January 3rd through January 5th. And the cool thing about this is that it's completely free without any type of limit. So you can watch any movie, any TV show as many times as you want this weekend, which is awesome. And if you've not watched any Apple TV Plus shows, I have some recommendations. Number 1 would be Shrinking. Number 2 would be Silo. And number 3 is my favorite right here, which is Severance. Season 2 is coming out on January 17th, but Severance is a phenomenal show. So I really like those 3. Severance, Shrinking, and Silo, all great. And those are just for, TV shows. We also have movies in here you can watch as well, but enjoy that free weekend if you have not, already subscribed to Apple TV Plus. Anyways, back to iOS 18.3 Beta 1 here. I did want to talk about the performance and the battery life. So I did run a fresh Geekbench test here. So you can see we scored a 3576 on the single core, 8903 on the multi-core. So this is on iOS 18.3 Beta 1, and you can see quite a bit of time between the last test on December 20th through January 3rd right here. So we did have a higher score for single core and much higher for multi-core there for Beta 1, which is a good sign. 18.3 Beta 1 feels fine. Again, I did install it on my main device as well, and I can confirm that it feels pretty much the same as 18.2 for me, which is great. And as far as battery life goes, battery life is not as good as it was on iOS 18.2, the final, public release, which is expected. I'm not really, too surprised by that, but battery life is just not great here on this first beta. So I do hope to see that get improved with time and hopefully with Beta 2 as well. So you can see what this is looking like on my main device. So I actually installed iOS 18.3 Beta 1 on my main device right here on Tuesday. Now, as far as what to expect next from Apple, the next public release, like I mentioned earlier, will most likely be iOS 18.2.1. And I would expect that as early as next week. I think as early as Monday, January 6th, we could see iOS 18.2.1 get released. Now, those 0.1 or those double point updates like 0.2, 0.1, those are always just going to be bug fix updates, security patch updates. You're not going to see any new features in that update. Now, as far as the betas, we should see iOS 18.3 Beta 2 come next week as well, the week of January 6th. We could even see it on January 6th or on the 7th right there. So those are the two we're expecting. And as far as 18.3, the final release, we should see that in the end of January or potentially even early February. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start with Apple's potential fix for their most controversial / criticized product in recent times, and that is the Magic Mouse. More specifically, the charging port on the Magic Mouse. So we might be seeing a fix for that because, according to a new report, Apple is working on a redesigned Magic Mouse that will address some long-standing complaints, including the location of the charging port. And a separate report says that a prototype of this new mouse has already been designed, and it adds a mixture of touch, voice controls, and hand gestures. So voice control on a mouse would be awesome, especially for today's workflows with AI and, transcription and dictation and things like that. It would be awesome just to be able to press down on your mouse and, speak without having to touch your keyboard. So that sounds awesome. And Mark Gurman appears to think so as well. So he chimed in on this on X by saying, voice control in the new Magic Mouse I wrote about this month makes sense in light of AI and the fact that Apple is on a decade-plus cycle. From what I've heard, big focus is ergonomics and gestures, relocated USB-C too. I'd expect a new keyboard too. But that might not be coming in 2025 because this report does say that this will be released alongside the upcoming M6 OLED MacBook Pro in 2026. I don't know why a mouse and a keyboard would be released alongside a MacBook. That doesn't make sense unless there's other products as well. So really, who knows at this point when it's going to come, but hopefully it does come within the next 24 months. Okay, so now let's talk about the iPhone SE4 because most likely we are just a couple of months away from seeing the release of Apple's next generation iPhone SE model. However, it might not actually be called the iPhone SE4. And that's because according to a source which Majin reported on here, he says that it seems that the new iPhone that Apple will unveil in 2025 will not be called iPhone SE4, but iPhone 16e. It should feature a design similar to the iPhone 14 with an OLED display and an action button. The available colors will be white and black. And he shares that alongside what appears to be a design file for a case for this iPhone 16e. And later on, he did post a clear case here showing the iPhone SE4/16e in this, short little video here. But as far as the naming scheme overall goes, I think that 16e makes a lot more sense than SE4. I mean, especially if it's going to have a similar design to the iPhone 16. I say similar, because the iPhone 14 and iPhone 16 do look pretty similar. So if it's going to have a similar design to the 16, also if it's going to be priced a little bit more than previous iPhone SE models, which we are hearing that as well, then 16e makes more sense. It's going to make people feel like they're getting a newer phone and not the little cheap SE phone. You know what I mean? I think 16e makes it sound more premium and makes it sound more up to date than the SE4 does. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. And we'll have to wait and see if this actually does end up coming true because, Majin does have a mixed track record. At least his sources have a mixed track record. And it's pretty hard to predict something that's, a marketing name as well, since that's not necessarily always going on in the factory leaks. But as far as the iPhone coming later this year, the iPhone 17, we also got another report that says that the base model iPhone 17 will have a higher refresh rate than 60 hertz. So this comes from Digital Chat Solution over on Weibo, and they said that supply chain materials corroborate rumors about a higher refresh rate display on the 17 and 17 Plus, but it did not say specifically if it's going to be 120 hertz or something lower. And I say 17 Plus, but this year we might be seeing the 17 Air, so we don't know what Apple's going to call it yet, whether they're going to ditch the 17 Plus in favor of the Air, we really don't know. This year there's really a lot more unknown than usual when it comes to the iPhones, at least this far in advance. We don't usually know much, but this year seems a little bit more, confusing than previous years. And by the way, I do also want to mention alongside the iPhone SE4 or iPhone 16e, we should also be seeing a new MacBook. I would expect them both to be released around the same time. We don't know for sure, but a new M4 MacBook Air is also expected in the spring. So within the next couple of months, we should also be seeing an M4 MacBook Air. We're not hearing about any major redesigns, but it should start at 16 gigs of RAM. Also this week, we heard some pretty interesting news that Tim Cook plans to donate $1 million to Donald Trump's inauguration fund. And this looks like it's going to be a personal donation directly from Tim Cook rather than a donation from Apple as a company, which is quite interesting. And Axios says that Tim Cook is donating to the inauguration in the spirit of unity and that Apple itself as a company is not expected to make a donation. And this right here might be the reason that the iPhone 17s can remain at the same price as the iPhone 16s. But who knows? I don't want to get too too political here on YouTube, but I just found this pretty interesting. And then finally, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a 20-year-old food delivery driver was taking the Red Line train in Chicago one morning just before Christmas when two men started attacking him randomly. One of them put him in a chokehold and the other threatened him with a knife. They then punched him several times in the face and body and stole his electric bike and his headphones. But what the two suspects didn't know was that the bike had an AirTag attached to it. So of course the 20-year-old called police and they were able to use its location data along with CTA surveillance footage to track them down within 35 minutes. I did not expect that, especially in a city like Chicago. But anyways, the two suspects who were aged 44 and 19 were arrested and charged with one felony count of aggravated battery and aggravated robbery. But without the AirTag and the Find My application, those police would probably not have found those people within a day, let alone 35 minutes. It may have even taken weeks. So gotta love that for the AirTag, and I hope that 20-year-old recovers. Anyways, that's it for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe. I do have a lot of interesting videos coming for the year 2025. So I can't wait to share those with you over the next several months. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.